Hi everybody, looks like we're live. Welcome. If you're new here, then welcome. My name's Lindsay, this is Jess. If you're not new here, welcome back. We're glad to see you. Happy International Women's Day. Tonight we are answering the question, actually a few questions about saddle skirt length and whether the shape of the skirt, square versus round, makes a difference for your horse if one is interfering with the horse's movement or not, as well as the length of the skirt, the length of the overall saddle this way, as well as the length of the skirt coming down the horse's side. So we're going to try to cover that in as much detail as we possibly can. We brought a saddle out here, we brought a horse out here, and we are going to try to cover those things. If you struggle with your connection, if you lose audio, or if we get paused, you can try refreshing your screen. You can always catch the replay. If you are on our email list, then you will get the replay delivered to your inbox automatically on Tuesday mornings. If you're not there yet, you want to get on that list. You can find that in our cover page, on the cover page of our Facebook page. There's a little blue button that says sign up, or you can find it through the link on our bio if you're finding us on Instagram, or you can just send me a message and say I want to get on that list so I can get the replay delivered, and I will make sure that you get on that list and you get the replay delivered to you on Tuesdays. Tammy, looks like a bunch of people are on. Tammy and Liz and Nancy. Yeah, Tammy, you were one of the people that asked this question, so we'll try to cover that. And if you had anything, else specific that you wanted to ask, make sure that you give us heads up. Leave that in the comments here, and we'll try to make sure that we cover that. If you have a question or you have a topic that you would like for us to address, you can do that by emailing us at hayescofelph@gmail.com, and we'll add it to our list and we'll do a whole session about it, try to make sure your question gets answered. You awake?
I'm awake.
You look like you're
Been a long day.
Yeah, I know. Falling asleep over there. Okay, so back to the question. Looks like a few of you guys are on now. That's awesome. Hi, Vicky. Hi, Sue. Okay, back to the question. Saddle skirt shape and length. So what we're talking about, if you're not up on your saddle parts, we're talking about the corners of the skirt square, if the skirt is square, or if the skirt is rounded off on the edges. And does that matter? As well as the length, the overall length of the saddle from front to back, as well as how long the skirt, so the skirt is the part that the whole saddle kind of sits on top of, comes down the horse's sides.
The part that covers your saddle pad.
Yes, the part that covers your saddle pad. So we're talking about whether that matters, whether it interferes with the horse's natural motion. There's a lot of, I think, misconceptions about that, and we're going to try to answer that. So you ride more horses than I do. What kind of horses do you ride? What ages do you ride? Horses with short backs? What do you have?
Yes, we ride them all.
Yeah.
I started a lot of colts. We do 2s, 3s, 4s. So as they're developing, as they're growing up, short-backed horses. Some aren't as good and some are longer-backed horses. We started a lot of colts for different disciplines. So, not only do we have our reiners and cow horses and ranch riders, but we're also going to have, some thoroughbreds, some Hanoverians, some English horses. I think that's the biggest one we do now is English horses. So there's definitely a wide variety of backs that we fit.
The biggest thing we do is English horses?
No, aside from
we do a couple of
the
English
reiners,
horses.
cow horse. I just mean
a couple
like
English horses every year. But
we don't do too many exotic breeds anymore.
Yeah.
We just start, I've just always done a bunch of English horses, but I mean, our main thing is reiners, cow horses, and ranch riders. But aside from that, we still do some, anybody that's been in the barn knows there's 14 two-hand horses, and then it seems like 1 or 2 stalls at a time we'll have a
Big ones.
16 to
How many horses do you ride in a day?
12 to 14 usually.
How many different horses do you ride in a year?
Ooh. Not as many anymore, because now we do a lot more.
The same ones for a longer time.
Yeah. Years ago, we used to do a lot of breaking where it was like 45 days. I know there was one year we did over 120 horses, just breakers, but that was ridiculous.
And how many years have you been doing it for?
You got a lot of questions.
I'm just trying to set the stage for why your opinion is valid about round versus square skirts, because there are some people that know a
45
lot
years
on the
old.
internet who are sharing things about skirts, and I think it matters who the opinion is coming from.
I started riding for the public when I was in school, still in high school.
So 100 years ago.
And I'm 45 now, and I've never done anything else. So there's been a few ponies
Are you
come through.
45? Or are you 44? No, you're 45. You're right. You're 45.
Don't make me second guess.
I know, you're usually the one that second guesses. Okay, so you ride
I've
a
done a
lot
few
of horses.
horses.
Do you prefer a round skirt or a square skirt? And if so, for what horses?
I don't think it matters. I think once you get behind your saddle that far, it's cosmetic and it's decoration. I don't think either one. I've had squares on short horses. I've had rounds on big horses. I think once you get off of that back, it's strictly decoration.
Okay, so round versus square, to you the shape does not matter. What about the length of the overall saddle?
The length from front to back or the length from top to bottom?
The length from front to back.
I think if you get into extremes, I mean, I've traded in some saddles from some people where the saddle makers, I don't know what, they just put extremes. But you looked at the saddle and went, that's odd. Then I think you're into, problems when you're starting 2-year-olds and that saddle's so far back that, they'll pop it up with their hips, basically.
I don't know what you mean. With a long saddle or a short saddle?
With a really long saddle.
Oh, okay.
Like I had one years ago. I mean, I ride in a 16 to a 16 and a half inch seat most of the time. And most saddles will have a couple inches behind the seat of fender or of skirt.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one, I took it in on trade. It was ridiculous. It had to be almost that far behind. And it was a horrible sitting saddle.
So would that even fit on a saddle pad?
No, it was ridiculous.
It would sit
It was
off
an
the end
old
of the
show
saddle pad.
saddle where they tried to put more silver on it, so they wanted it bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And, I guess likely when it was made in the mid-90s, there was a lot of thoroughbred influence in the pleasure horses. So they tried to hide the big long backs, is
Thought
what
they'd
we
make
always
it
thought.
longer,
It was the most ridiculous sitting saddle, but that was such an extreme that when I saw it, even when I saw it, I was like, what the heck? But, as long as there's a couple inches behind there, where it's comfortable.
So there's a lot of people ask the question, does my short-backed horse need a shorter saddle, shorter lengthwise? Do I need a shorter saddle? People ask the same thing
No.
about pads a lot too.
You don't need a shorter saddle. If you're having a problem, you need a better saddle. And I think that's one of the things, 90% of the time, if you're having trouble, short back or long backed horses, kind of touched on this with my sister the other day, like her barrel horse, she was talking about her saddle that was bridging real bad, which means touching at the back of the saddle and the front of the saddle and nothing in between. Longer horse, maybe rides a little higher headed, hollows that back out a little bit. And, there's the problem. But I think saddle-wise, just a better saddle always fixes that problem.
Yeah.
And a shorter back horse or a long back horse, horsemanship fixes a lot of it too. How you ride them properly, how you make that horse use his back, how they're
Yeah,
built.
how you develop their conformation.
And I think that's something everybody kind of forgets, is how we ride them definitely affects them. I mean, I throw a regular, you know, even some of them little, like right now, some of the 2-year-olds come in, they're big, they're strong, they're, you know, whatever. And other ones are just a little bit smaller. They just haven't bloomed out yet. And the same saddles go on both, but right off the bat, I'm trying to make them go into a very rounded position. So, I mean, it's just not an issue. But I think that's the biggest thing is 9 times out of 10, it's just bad saddles, cheap saddles. I shouldn't say cheap, just poor made saddles. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it matters. I've never experienced a horse having an issue with having a square skirt or a round skirt. I actually remember quite vividly being at Meredith Manor, being a student at Meredith Manor, and being told that don't buy a saddle with a square skirt because it'll poke your horse in the hip, basically. And it was a thing where, you know, people were kind of like, don't be that person who like buys a square skirt. And I remember thinking like, well, then why the heck are there so many people making them? Why are there so many people, when we go to Congress, why are there so many people riding in them? And
not just regular people.
Why are the best of
high-end
the
horses,
best
very good trainers.
people who could ride in any saddle, why are they choosing to ride in saddles that have square skirts? And when I watch them compete, if it is interfering, I can't tell. You know, at that point, you know, I couldn't tell, but it didn't seem to be. It just didn't, the whole picture, it didn't make sense. You know, it doesn't make sense that, you know, people are creating these saddles to be ridden in. You know, like one of the comments that we had on a saddle that I posted, it's actually the saddle that I have sitting here, was never buy a saddle with a square skirt. A saddle with a square skirt is not good for, I forget how the person worded it, but it's not good for performance or for use or whatever. It's going to interfere with the way the horse moves. It's not good for anything other than for show. But this saddle is not built, this isn't a showy saddle. Like, I don't know, do people just build saddles just to sit in their living rooms? Like,
Well, I'm sure what they were talking about is they just weren't.
built to look nice, but
Like
not
we use
built
it to
for
show.
function.
We describe show saddles as like the big silver Western pleasure saddles. They're describing show saddles, I think, as like we go to the reining pen or we go to whatever.
So you're going
Instead
to
of
show in
you
a
know,
saddle
instead
that
of
interferes with your horse's motion? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. And I just don't think that it does for the reining and for the cow horse, for the ranch riding, for the pleasure, for the, you know, any of those types of events. Now, since becoming dealers for Bob's Custom Saddles and talking with them about saddle fit and some of the different skirts and preferences, there are, in the cow horse and the cutting saddles that Bob's Custom Saddles do, there's a huge range in what people prefer in this, not so much in the length of the saddle overall. Everybody's pretty much in agreement about that, I think, but in how far the skirt actually comes down the side of the horse. There are a couple of trainers who prefer a saddle that is a little bit shorter, that doesn't come down as far, and then has kind of a rounded edge on it, because they say that it interferes with the way that their horse is moving when they're cutting. Okay, so these are $1 million riders riding cutters where their legs are coming out to the side and doing that, which is such a unusual position for a horse to be in, and it's such a specific group of people that are requesting that type of saddle.
But we also talked too today about like Bob Avila, who's done every event there is, does the cow horse where he also has to do the herd work.
And he does it in a saddle
And he
that
likes,
is the same
or I shouldn't
skirt.
say likes, I guess I never asked him, but he shows a lot in square skirts.
Square skirts that come down pretty far on the side.
And it's what you get used to. And the neat thing about
Yeah.
it like when you're asking me how old I was and how many horses. Neat thing when you get that many horses in the barn, you get that many owners with opinions.
Yeah.
And I've had people, tell me how my tack's wrong and, I should have this and I should have that.
Yeah.
And I think, I do this for a living. If there was something that truly...
If there was a way to make my life easier,
Yes.
wouldn't I do it?
And
Yeah.
the funny part I always think too is when everybody will tell me that, it's also the same people that, maybe ride, and nothing against these people, but, they ride in their living room watching TV in their saddles. They don't actually work in these things.
Yeah.
And it's funny how they get an opinion, but they can't back it up with, come ride these ponies and let's see what they do.
Yeah.
Horse people are notorious for having opinions. They might, right or wrong, because everybody argue them, but Lord knows they have opinions. And I was just kind of chuckling when we were talking about like some of the different disciplines. And this goes back a long time ago when I would have been a teenager.
Just a boy?
I was just a boy.
Just a young boy? Just a young lad?
And we had some kind of neat barrel horses. And I rode barrel horses in an old Claiborne reining saddle. And just as a side note, it had heart conchos on it.
You don't have it still. I've never
I
seen
don't
that.
have it. I don't know where it ever ended up at. It got dealt around the country with a whole bunch of my friends and stuff.
Heart contrast.
But it had square.
Was it good luck?
I didn't keep barrel racing. I wasn't good luck barrel racing if that counts. But we had some neat barrel horses, and they all turned the barrel. They didn't get ouchy in their sides. I mean, they were fine.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing when you look at how a horse moves. There's no logic to it. When you take their backs and whatever, I think once it's behind the tree, you are decoration. And I like square skirts. I like the looks of them. I don't like deep ones, like as far down as it goes to my knee, only because, like for me, from my crotch to my knee, I have very short legs. I have long from my knee to my ankle, but from the top of my leg, I have very short ones. So I find it more comfortable myself having a shorter one, but that's just a personal preference, or a cutout or whatever.
Yeah.
But that just to fit me, and the same with like a shorter. I don't have really short legs in a whole, but from, like I say, from my crotch to my knee, my leg is not very long, so it fits me in that position.
Okay, we're doing a lot of talking here. If anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and leave those here. And if you're watching the replay, leave your questions because I'll come back and try to make sure that I get those answered. Should we show them the saddle and just go through that again, looking at the saddle?
Sure.
Okay, you want to be Vanna? I'll be the cameraman, you be Vanna first.
Well, you don't want to show off all your.
I got, yeah. So, I know. It's March. Somebody's
it's not
watching
that
this.
cold in
So I know-
Canada.
It is, yeah. It's cold. I've been standing around teaching. I'm cold. I just got totally dressed up in my Carhartts and everything. Don't judge me.
I'm comfortable in a ball cap and.
You also,
Well, now I
once
do.
again, have put the heater directly on yourself.
Well, you're all bundled up.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna turn the camera around. I'm gonna show you guys. I'm gonna show you guys a saddle that we have posted, and I'm just gonna go back through. We're just gonna go back through those things for a minute. So if you have questions, I will still be able to see those and try to get those answered. But we'll just kind of go back through that for a second. Try to not get unplugged here. Okay, so when we are talking about the shape of the skirt, we're talking about the corners there. So that is a square corner. Oh shoot, we don't have a round corner one out to show everybody. That's a square corner there. And the question about that is whether that interferes with the horse's motion. So we're gonna actually put one on a horse in a minute and we'll let you decide for yourself, but that's the question there. And then the other thing we're talking about is the overall length of the skirt from front to back. Vanna White, can you show us? Wow, excellent job.
Should have been a hand model.
You're fulfilling your lifelong dream of being a hand model right now. Okay, so that's the overall length. And so that's where we're talking about horses with short backs. Do they need to have a shorter skirted saddle that way? And then the length of the skirt coming down the side. Thank you, Vanna. That's the length that we were talking about when we were saying that there are a couple of riders, a couple of $1 million riders in the cutting who prefer to have a shorter skirt, but for the most part, this is kind of a standard length for the reiners, the cow horses, the ranch riders, all that stuff. And then can you show them where the cutout is? Because what Jess had mentioned was that he liked to have a little bit more space. Like to have a little bit more space for his leg down in there rather than having the skirt come straight across. So that saddle has a cutout there. And that's where he's saying he'd rather the skirt be shorter up underneath his leg rather than longer there.
I like the feel of the shorter this way, and yet I really like the looks of a bigger fender skirt that way. So the cutout for me is.
So the cutout or the skirt that angles up, because you can also get a skirt that goes on an angle. Thanks, Vanna. Goes on an angle upwards there. Yeah. Okay, so if anybody has any questions about that, you guys can leave them here in the comment box. Otherwise, I wanted to touch on something, and that means I'll be Vanna and you can be the camera person.
You trust me with this?
Yeah, I've seen you take pictures before, So you never really did ask me what my opinion was on saddle length, skirt length.
So this is a 4-year-old reiner.
Yeah, so when we're talking about the length of the skirt for a horse that has a short back, and a lot of people think that they need to have, because their horse's back is, this long, they need to have a skirt that is shorter because they get maybe rubbing in here. I think normally what the problem is there is, like we said, you need a better fitting saddle, a better quality saddle, rather than changing the length of it. So if you have a good quality pad on and a good quality saddle on top of there's no reason for it to be digging in there. If your horse is quite old and has a swayed back or something like that, that is different. That's where you're going to probably have to add an additional pad, some kind of additional padding in there just to make up for that loss of muscle mass in there. There's not a lot that a saddle can do to make up for that difference in the shape of that horse's back, if that kind of makes sense. But what my position is on the length of the saddle as well as the length of the pad is that you want to cover as much of this area as you possibly can. Obviously, you don't want something coming right up over top of their bum and, flapping around or popping around or whatever. But there are two long muscles. So the horse's spine goes along here, right? And there are two long muscles that go on either side of the spine. They originate up here in the withers, and they go, one goes like this all the way down here, and then it inserts up in here, and the other one is kind of just underneath it a little bit. You can't, if you're familiar with equine anatomy at all, you can't feel it quite as much if you're doing massage therapy, but it's under there as well. So basically you have like this all the way along here into there. And those muscles are affected by saddle fit in a huge way. Those are the two muscles that get affected the most by saddle fit. Now, when you're taught about massage therapy, You're always taught whenever you massage a long muscle, you never finish the stroke partway through the muscle. You always go all the way from where it originates to where it inserts, and maybe you even go longer than that. So maybe you even come like way up here and you massage all the way down there, and if you're not quite sure if you're at the end of it, you kind of keep going, okay? Because muscle fibers run like this. They kind of run like hairs, and if you think about as you're doing a massage, I'm going to get to the point about saddle fit in just a second, I promise. If you think about using your massage stroke like untangling hair, if you just run the brush along here, you're going to end up with a massive knot here, right? You're not actually, you might be moving the knot around, but you're not actually getting it out. Okay, so if we're going to put a saddle, if we're going to take a saddle and a pad and we're going to try to make it smaller than the length of these muscles, we're going to put it on there, then we're going to strap it to the horse, then we're going to sit on it, then we're going to bounce around in it while the horse is doing different things, and we're going to create tension in those muscles. Are we not going to be better to have something that covers the length of those muscles in the pad, as far as the pad goes, and then covers as much of that surface area for the saddle, so that we're distributing the weight of the saddle, the weight of the rider, and some of that bouncing around. We're distributing all of that weight across all of those muscles rather than pinpointing in one spot. That's where I feel like it makes so much more sense to have something long that goes the length of those muscles. All of that weight is distributed as evenly as possible. And then you're not going to have as many issues with saddle fit. So that's again where it comes back to, it's not so much that you need a shorter skirt, it's more that you need a better fit in your saddle. The more surface area we can cover, I think, actually is going to be better. Should we throw, are there any questions on there?
Glenda had one question, and it was about the strap or the leather underneath the fender. Glenda, that piece of leather is so that when your leg, it's a very thin piece of leather, and it's so that when you bring your leg forward and back, it doesn't bind up on the front D-ring, and it allows a real free swing into it. And that's what that's for.
Oh, on the rigging?
Yep. Yeah. You want a saddle or you want me to?
Do you want to, you were just doing such a good job as Vanna. Do you want to be Vanna White and I'll hold this? So we're just going to pop a saddle on this horse for a second so you guys can see what it actually looks like, and you can decide for yourself. If you think that the square skirt or the length of the skirt is going to interfere with this short-backed horse.
And that's a big skirted saddle.
That is a big skirted saddle. Yeah.
So we do it up.
Yeah, do it up for safety.
Oh, that's what we're getting.
For safety. Okay, so this is very similar to that one that we showed you. This one is, what, actually an inch bigger in the seat, but very similar in measurements. We're not using the other one, yeah, because it's already sold, belongs to somebody else, brand new. Oh, there was a question in here. Doesn't the tree basically account for the weight distribution? So yeah, the weight gets distributed mainly by the tree, and then also by the rest of the saddle, also by the pad. So you have a few different ways that you can distribute that weight. Okay, so length of the saddle there from the front to the back. You can see that that saddle pad actually covers almost all of those muscles. It might be just a touch short on the end there, on the back end there, but it covers pretty much all of those muscles all the way. You're really getting into this. All the way to the back. And then I think maybe from this angle is the best to show you that. Yeah, so Tammy's saying I don't see any interference at all. From this angle, you can really tell how dusty this saddle is. It would be really hard. Oh, good. So even if you pick the horses, it'd be really hard for that to interfere with. It's not even touching when she has her leg hiked way up and to the side. And that one has a back cinch on. It'd be really, really hard for this mare for that to interfere with her back legs. I don't know that it'd be possible on this horse. And you ride her in this all the time, and you stop her and turn her and work cows on her, and
When they stop, they're back rolling.
they're back rounds, yeah.
So the more it rounds, if they do it properly, they round all the way from here to here. So as that rounds, if anything, this comes up a little bit. It has to.
Yeah.
It's all preference, and if you get something in your mind, you're gonna go with it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we have answered the questions here, unless there were any that we missed back here. Strapping
But also remember,
across.
that's a bob saddle.
Yeah.
With a one pad.
Yeah.
With nettle stirrups. All available from here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Putting that out there.
So Sam is saying, I know it's important to get the pad lifted into the gullet. How do you recommend breaking in a new one pad for a better fit? So what Sam's talking about is these one pads, they are thick. This is a 1 inch. So there's 1 inch of felt and then a 1/4 inch of neoprene, and it's all one piece. So when it's on the horse, it's kind of hard to tell, but it's all one piece. So when you first put it on the horse, it kind of sits flat, like just like a pancake. And it's so important, like just pulled it up into the gullet there. It's so important that you make sure that you pull it up. Sam, the thing that you could do is you could set your pad, like fold it in half and set it down, like set something on top of it so that it's kind of folded in half if it's brand new. Or you just ride in it and you pull it up.
Just pull them off.
Put the saddle on and then lift the pad up into the gullet before you tighten it up, and then tighten it up. That's the best way. That's the best way to break it in. Okay, let's go back over to where we were sitting down for a second, because I do have to talk for just a minute about clinics. Because we had some clinics.
I was just going to say with Linda's question, there's an older one. And it's just so when you're riding, when you come up, this doesn't catch. And that just slides wherever you want. And it's a really, really thin piece of leather.
Yeah, it's super thin. Can you lift that up again? Yeah.
But it just keeps everything from binding up.
Yeah. Are you taking it off now?
Nope, but I was going to do it up so
Oh, okay.
you can shake or something.
Okay. Okay, I hope that answered some of your questions, and it kind of showed you the way that square skirt and the length of the skirt actually sits on the horse. That's just one horse, obviously, but hold on one second. That's just one horse, but you can see how much clearance that horse had, and she's got a pretty short back, so I think she was kind of a good representative to show you guys that and make that decision for yourself. I think for people who are struggling with their saddle not fitting properly and feeling like they need to get a shorter skirted saddle, a one pad, a good quality pad, we like the one pads, but a good quality pad can help some of that, can help hide some of the flaws of poor saddle fit. But you're going to be better to save a little bit of money and try to invest in a better quality saddle to make sure that the fit is better. It's not so much the length of the skirt as it is the quality of the fit. And somebody was talking about trees a minute ago, the quality of the tree and the way that the tree fits your horse is probably the most important thing. Do you have anything else you wanted to say about saddle fit? Oh, I know. I had one other thing. Sorry.
Go ahead.
One reason why people think that their saddle isn't fitting their horse properly is when they start to rub off right up on the, like where I was showing where that muscle inserts. The pad can sometimes rub on there. They think their pad doesn't fit their horse properly, or their saddle doesn't fit their horse properly because it rubs up in there just a little bit. And that could be true. And obviously you don't want something rubbing the hair off, irritating the skin, breaking open the skin and making it prone to infection, bacteria and stuff getting in there and getting an infection in there. You don't want your saddle rubbing in there and causing muscle pain. But a lot of times, this time of year specifically, that's where the pad ends. So if you're riding and that pad is moving, it acts like a natural grooming tool. And a lot of times when you pull your saddle off, you'll see a little line of hair there.
Which also means a line of dirt.
A line of hair, a line of dirt, okay. But
Oh, there's
also,
gook in there, right?
yeah, there's stuff in there. But there's also that pad acting like a natural groomer, taking the hair off first. It's like if you were sitting there with your fingers, on that one spot, that hair it's just gonna come out first. So especially at this time of year, I think, which if you're watching the replay at a later date, we're right in the middle of heavy shedding season here right now in the spring. Just the placement of that, and the same thing with your cinch. A lot of times the hair will come off there first just because that's where it's being rubbed. That's where it falls out first. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not fitting your horse well. If it's not fitting your horse well, it's going to be rubbing down to the skin. It's going to be opening the skin up. It's going to be hot. It's going to feel warm to the touch. Your horse is going to be tender when you touch it. That's a different thing than just the hair being rubbed off. The hair can be rubbed off and you don't have to worry about it. Did you have something else you
Well, I
wanted
think,
to say?
and the definition of hair rubbed off is not bald skin.
No,
It's that the shaggy hair has rubbed
the
off
shaggy
first.
hair has come off and you could.
One thing I'd like to add too is like you talk about investing in saddles. Mm-hmm. And not everybody wants to belly up for a brand new expensive saddle, but
No.
if you buy good used saddles, they hold their value.
Yeah.
And the poorer new ones, it's like a car. They depreciate as soon as you ride in them. They ain't worth nothing. But a good used one, we buy lots of used ones. I work in a lot of used ones. In my life, I have only had a couple of brand new saddles, and the used ones will hold their value. Yeah, they're a bit of an investment. You put that in there, but then if you find another one, or you get out or whatever, you can sell it.
You've made that
And
investment.
it's a good investment
Yeah.
because you still get your money back.
Yeah.
And that's one piece of equipment or equipment in that way is something that I tell a lot of people is a great investment. Pink halters, funny colored polo wraps, all that stuff. That's not. But good saddles, good bridles, reins,
Why are you
stuff like
picking on pink?
because I have 3 daughters.
Okay.
I got lots of pink polo wraps.
Yeah.
And those are fun for my kids, but they're not an investment. Good equipment, good bridles. I've sold some old bridles at auctions, and they held their value. I mean,
And a good saddle will save you so much. It'll save you a lot of money. It'll save you chiropractic and massage therapy. It'll save you.
and you'll enjoy riding.
Your horse will enjoy it more. You'll enjoy it more. Things will happen better for you and faster for you. You have less chance of missing out on whatever it is that you like to do with your horse, whether it's just ride at home or trail ride or go to the shows or whatever, you'll be able to do more of that. It will help you get some of that time back, right? From rather than stressing about your saddle not fitting and dealing with the repercussions of a poorly fitted saddle.
One that always used to bother me. People say I want an old piece of junk. I don't need a good saddle to start my colts in. And I'm thinking those are the ones I want to have the best fitting, you know, so them 2-year-olds never get a bad fit and a sore back and all that kind of stuff. And I feel better riding in them. Mm-hmm. But your work saddle should be your best made saddle. To me, it doesn't have to be the fanciest. It doesn't have to be the prettiest.
Yeah, the one that you ride them in all the time.
I mean, I have some work saddles that aren't overly fancy anymore. They've had a few miles on them, but they're good and they fit a horse right. And I think that's so important. They're good quality saddles, so they actually fit right, and everybody can go have a good ride.
Did we answer all the questions there? I think so.
Do you have any questions? Would you like me to ask
What does
you?
everybody like better?
I like square skirts.
Round skirts or square skirts?
What do you like? If you were going to order the Lindsay Hayes Cofell saddle for you, what would you
I
get?
am working on it, and it's a square skirt with the cutout. Yeah.
There you go.
What about you? You like square?
I like the looks of a square.
I
Now,
like
when I
both.
ride, I mean, I've had rounded and things, and I just don't care. I'm more worried about,
Yeah.
you know, does it fit me and does it fit on horses?
Oh yeah. There's so
You know, there's so many fads. Like, definitely right now, the squares are a very popular fad right now. I don't know if it's one of the ones that's gonna. I don't think it's a fad that's gonna go out of style though. You know, but it's just a fad. Or I shouldn't say it's just a fad. Like, but it's very popular. I just think I like the looks of it. I'll admit that. But if I was ordering, you know, just a colt saddle, you know, to me, that's not even a thought in my brain. I'm just like, well, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
whatever's
like
behind me,
both.
I don't look at it.
I think some of the round skirts with like there's some really beautiful ones out there. You know, that show saddle that I had that I showed the Juice Marin when I was pregnant that Lindsay owns now. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful classic saddle. It has a round skirt. It has round like corner plates, and I like both, but right now if I'm gonna
So
order
now
one,
liking the quarter cut skirts. Oh, like where they
the angle cut.
take like a 90 degree.
Okay, yep.
Those are different.
Yeah.
And the neat thing about anything like that, it's personal preference. I'm not sure. I don't love them.
They're not big. They're not big for the Rainers.
No, but even in the ranch, it's just, and it doesn't, you know, and everybody has their own preference. That's the neat thing about it.
Yeah.
It's not one, I don't like that look. I've seen some really cool ones. I seen one the other day where the tooling come in that same, it just had like a border tooling, and then right at that angle it had a really bigger spot with a different tool. It just looked really cool. And that was like the first one that had that where I went, wow, like that looks cool.
That looks cool.
And that's the neat thing, you know, when you talk about what's back there, as I always describe it, it's all decoration back there. So, you know, it's whatever you like. I've seen ones that were not just a square skirt, it actually angled out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who made that. There was
There was somebody who came for a custom saddle fit a little while ago, and she called it a bat wing when it comes way out like that. Sarah saying, my current Bob's is a round and I love it, but the new one will be square, so I'll have one of each. Yeah, well,
Well, you just need all
Sarah
of them.
has,
I mean,
Sarah has a really
get a
beautiful round it's actually very similar to the saddle I was just talking about. She has a really beautiful Avila. The tooling on it is so, it's totally blinged out, has beautiful silver on it. And her new one is gonna be awesome. New one's gonna be beautiful.
I think that's a whole other topic
square
when you talk about,
conchos.
because it's the look. To me, I love tooling. I am not talented to do something like that, and I love really nice tooling.
Yeah.
I like silver on some saddles, but to me, I really like really nice tooling more than I like silver. So yeah, to me, it's the tooling is what does it for me. One of my favorite saddles was around. I don't know. I'm kind of impartial, but I guess no, I don't. I think I'd go
Glenda says
with
she
square.
likes both. She has no preference. Tammy likes square.
Square.
So Tammy, now that we've had this conversation, do you feel good about, are you going to be buying a square skirt, or what was the reason why you asked that? Do you have a square skirt and you were worried that maybe it was going to interfere with your horse, or you just wanted us to say, don't worry about it?
And if any of your friends are telling you it interferes with them, tell them I can send them enough pictures of world champions stopping horses in square skirts. Guys that are riding horses that are worth a lot of money with a lot on the line. Horse people and their opinions are funny. I guess mine included. I might be.
Yeah, take it easy. Haley saying square. Yeah, Haley has a pretty square skirt. Marie square. Lori saying square looks sharp, but I have round. Maybe
Don't
your
worry,
next
Lori.
one is square.
Yeah,
What are you going to try to sell her one?
We can solve your thing. You can have one of each.
Yeah, we'll sell you one.
Square.
Kim square. Yeah. Sam square. So Sam has a custom saddle too that is square. Yeah.
Square is definitely really popular. It's definitely taken off.
Yeah. They're nice looking with a square, a nice square show pad, I think. Okay, so thanks for being here with us, guys. Hope that answered a lot of your questions. Today was a big day. If you're on our email list, we did send out the first 2 clinics, and I added a third one actually because the first 2 filled so quickly. So we did have some equitation clinics go live today. If you are on our email list, you can check your inbox because that info is in your inbox. If you're not on our email list, you can go to our shop. You can go to our website and go to the shop, and inside of the shop, there's now a category called clinics, and in there are 3 equitation clinics with myself. We do an hour and a half of kinesthetic exercises. It's really fun. We're learning basically the exercises that you need to know to understand what your equitation is, where it comes from, and a basis to come back to all the time, no matter what discipline you're doing, no matter what horse you're on. It really takes it down to the essence of your equitation, your balance, your strength, your flexibility, your coordination on the horse's back. They're really popular. They filled really fast. I did add a third date. If you're interested in getting in on that, you want to do it ASAP. We will have more later on in the summer, but we've got those 3 dates up for now. Next week, lots of questions about reining clinics and ranch riding clinics, and Jess spilled the tea on a ranch trail clinic a couple weeks ago on here. We are going to have those as well. The info for those will be available next week. Let me get through the equitation stuff first this week, and then I will get the other stuff out to you. There are a few people that had signed up for clinics last year that got canceled. We're trying to make sure that all of those people are taken care of first. So if I have not reached out to you yet, then you will be hearing from me to make sure that you get booked back in. Anybody new, you are welcome. You are welcome to come to these and hang out with us.
There's a question on there a second ago from Elise, and I didn't understand. It's a third date.
Elise said third date. Yeah, there's a third date. Elise, I don't know if you saw, but there's a third date. The first date is April 8th. It's a Friday morning. Okay, so, and you're saying watch. The first date is April 8th. It's a Friday morning. They're before I came out to teach lessons, I better check before I tell everybody that there's still space, but there was a couple spaces left in that one. It's Friday morning from 10 till 11:30. The second one is April 22nd from 6 to 7:30. That one is booked full with a wait list. And then the third date that I opened up when the other ones filled up as quickly as they did is May 6th, which is also a Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Last I checked, there were still a couple spots. If you want to get a spot, you need to go to the shop and buy your spot on there. Those ones, the equitation clinics, we don't do auditors. At least it looks like you're asking to watch. For the equitation ones, we don't do auditors. You're basically contorting your body around on your saddle, sitting on your horse. Your horse is more of a prop. Sometimes it's stationary, sometimes it's in motion, but we're moving our bodies around in the saddle, and I don't have auditors for that just because the participants are more comfortable without having a bunch of people watching them. The other ones, the reining ones, and the ranch riding and the ranch trail, yes, we will have spectators for that as long as nothing changes with COVID regulations.
Somebody put on there, how far do we travel?
How far do we travel, and looking forward to our West Coast tour dates.
We've done Florida and Newfoundland.
We've done, yeah, across the states, and
You went way up north, so who knows where that was. There was bears up there.
yeah,
We go wherever.
we like going places. Yeah, we're pretty busy this year.
Elise, I was gonna send you a text, but since you're on here, like your 2-year-old, very nice horse. Are you going to the West Coast?
Also, Sarah's saying looking forward to your West Coast tour dates. I've seen the place where Sarah rides at, and there's like mountains. She can see the mountains right from her arena. So, you tell me the dates for that, Sarah. I'm there.
You just want to go somewhere.
Also, yeah, also we'll need babysitters. So, and can I bring my dog?
You're leaving the kid, but taking the dog.
I meant babysitters there. Like,
Oh.
can I just, I'll just
thought you meant
bring
like-
the kids. They can have their vacation with the babysitter. I'll do the clinic with the mountains in the background.
I thought
Charlie
you
will
meant you
have
were
a
leaving
great
the
time.
kids at a babysitter.
We'll leave them here. Okay, those are the details about the clinics. We're looking forward to seeing some of you in person, and thanks for being here with us tonight.
Have a good night.
Good night.